everyone, it's Mary Ellen, and welcome back to my channel where we talk about all things related to the storytelling industry. If you don't already know me, I write nonfiction under my real name, Mary Ellen Quigley, and romance under my pen name, M.E. Laverne. You can see my lovely microphone. I did not realize that until after I hit record. I think it's hiding now. Anyway, how are you guys doing? Last week I skipped a video because I had a really chaotic week last week. I'll go ahead and let you in on a couple of the things, but first thing was just busy at work. I had some health issues that popped up, one of which was I was diagnosed with diabetes last week. It was very emotional because of reasons I'll talk about here in a minute. And then I had like a wound on my foot. I had to go to wound care. Just a lot of like doctor's appointments and meetings that got popped into the week. And then I really did not have a lot of time to work on writing. So I did not have much to update you guys on. But I am back this week, and this one is really more so an update on what I've been up to these last couple of weeks and how I have been working on my mother's book. For those of you who have missed the last few vlogs, videos, whatever you want to call them, I have been rewriting a book I wrote about my mother. This is the tentative cover. It's very similar to the original cover, called Lessons My Mother Taught Me. And the first version of this book came out back in 2012, 1 year after my mother passed away. And I have said multiple times on this channel that I was very unhappy with the first version of my mother's book because I felt like it read like a Wikipedia article. There wasn't enough emotion and heart in the book. So it's been on my list to sit down and rewrite it, but I knew that it was going to be an emotional undertaking. And these last couple of weeks, as I have been digging up information, it most certainly has been that. So a couple of updates. I'm going to try to keep this video short, but you know me, I'm a yapper, so I have no guarantees. All right, a couple of updates. I did, in fact, go to the Dollar Tree, as I had mentioned I was going to do, and I bought myself a planner for pre-planning my book release schedule. I bought this for two reasons. One was because it was $1.25, and I wanted one that was just going to be monthly views. Now, I could have just gotten a regular calendar, but this is small. It allows me to be thrown into like a bag or a purse or something. So for $1.25, why not? On the back, it does have a like little outline of the whole year as a whole. I'll show you what it looks like. And I did go through and I planned my book release schedule. So if you look where the yellow highlights are, and I have little abbreviations, you will also notice there are a lot of books. If you are really paying attention and counting here, yes, there are 7 books that I currently have scheduled to release. I will come back to that because that's a large number. I know you're probably like, you're insane. And then for the beginning of it, I started mapping out, hold on, let me find my page here. Lots of paper noises. ASMR maybe? Maybe not. Anyway, I started mapping out just color coding. I don't have working highlighters, apparently. Mine are all dry except for yellow. And I was able to go through here and like color code. So basically one color stands for like drafting, the second color is for editing, the third color is for formatting, different things like that. So anyways, I have mapped out the first like 6 months of the year before I work on the last half because there are 7 books on the list. Let me explain though, because yes, I have 7 books. However, in the 7 books that I have planned, several are already written or mostly written, so they're not actually new books. So for example, the one I'm working on right now that I want to get out by the end of January is my mother's book. So Lessons My Mother Taught Me right now has a release schedule of like, hold on, January 26th or 28th. What day is that? The 28th. There you go. It's like it's the last Tuesday in January. That book is what I'm working on right now, and it's a rewrite of a book that's already written. So again, it's not going to take a very long time to do that. The other 3 books out of my 7, okay, are part of the Main Street Heart series. Those of you who have been here for a while know that in November I released the first short story in Main Street Hearts, and that one was called Sweet Serenade. Main Street Hearts is literally short stories that are about 10 to 15,000 words, and all of the stories in that series are already written. They were written years ago. It's a matter of doing one more pass through and then sending them off to an editor for any editing that needs to be done. So the other 3 books in that series, Sweet Melody, Sweet Refrain, and Sweet Harmony, are already written. So even though I have 7 books, I really only have 4 because the 3 of them are completely written. And then of the 4 that are left, right, Mom's book and Nocturne, which is my vampire romance, are already written. They need to be rewritten. So Mom's rewritten to include information I didn't know when I first wrote the book and more emotional stuff. And then Nocturne is going to be a little bit more time consuming of a rewrite because that was written late, like 2006 to 2010-ish. I'm wanting to say was like the time span. It's a fully written draft, like fully completed beginning to end. But it was written over 10 years ago. So there's a lot of things that need to be updated. Even like, I know I mentioned this before on like a TikTok video or something, but like in one of the scenes, my main character gets angry and slams the phone down. No one slams their phone down anymore. So updating technology and all of that is going to be a main part of it. I also know that one of my characters has a beeper. Nobody uses pagers or beepers anymore. I call them beepers, but pagers. No one uses those anymore. So like, it's going to be a lot of updating and then making sure I still feel good about the plot and maybe get some beta readers once I go through that to make sure that it makes sense. All of that good stuff, right? So again, out of the 7 books, 5 of those books are either already written, fully drafted, and just need to be reworked or edited. So like, in reality, I'm only writing 2 books next year. The rest are going to be rewrites or edits, which I feel like is not that hard. So when I first sat down, I was like, these are the books I'd like to get out. I was like, oh my God, 7 books. And then I was like, yeah, but it's really only like 2 with a lot of editing and rewriting. I was like, that's doable. And one of my main goals, I know I've mentioned this to you guys before, is that if I want to make this a career, I need to have a more consistent release schedule. 1 book a year, which is what I've been doing, is not going to make you a career. So one of the ways I want to tackle this is by doing this and incorporating shorter stories interwoven with longer length books, because Nocturne is a full length novel. So we'll see how it goes. But that is the current plan. And I'm excited about it. So 2025 is tentatively mapped out. And my next book should come out at the end of January. Something else I did to prepare for 2025, which I will actually leave you guys a link. I do not have a version of this to share with you guys, but I have been buying author content calendars, and there's one that's a favorite of mine. It's by Meet Cute Creative. It's the one, like meetcutecreative.com or something like that. I will put a link below. But essentially, it's a person who does an author content calendar. And what I love about it is that you can buy a lot of content calendars where the content is fully planned for you. That is not what I'm looking for. I do not want an impersonal cookie cutter social media plan for my socials. That's not my goal. My goal is just give me ideas so I can run with the idea and create my own thing. And I bought one back in 2023. I did not buy one in 24. 24 was not a good year for me on social media. I was very inconsistent, as we've talked about in previous videos. But going forward for 25, my goal is to post every single day, 365 days for the year, and to have something posted to my social media accounts somewhere every single day. So I did go in and buy an updated 2025 version of the author content calendar. I will put it down, a link down below. There are different bundles. You can buy a bundle that includes like graphic ideas. You can include a bundle that includes like how to run a Facebook group, and she's got a ton of add-ons. But if you want just the content calendar, like just the calendar, it's $15. And basically the way the calendar works is it gives you a prompt. So for example, and I don't have it in front of me. I can actually bring it up. Let me bring it up so I can read you guys a couple of examples because I feel like it would be very helpful. And again, I'm not sponsored by this person. They did not ask me to, but I've used it twice now. Well, actually I think three times because I bought it in 22, 23, and then 25. I didn't buy it for 24. But long story short, I have used this particular person's content calendar multiple years. And what I love about it is that everybody can all buy the same calendar and we're still going to have different social media posts because they're not telling you what to post. They're prompting you. So for example, January 1st, the prompt is to share writing or reading goals for 2025. Now, every single one of us is going to have different goals. So we can all post about our 2025 goals. It's not going to be the same post, and it's not going to be the same graphic. because you're still making your own graphic. Now you can buy a graphic pack that has like starter templates for things, especially for like the pack that I bought is for like if you're releasing a book, it's different layouts and different countdowns to like your book release, but you still have to make graphics for all these. So we're not going to have the same post. Wednesday, January 15th, share a status update of where you are in your current work in progress and tell your readers about it. We all have different works in progress. And this one also gives you TikTok and Instagram reel ideas, which TikTok, it sounds like for the US is going away here very soon, but you can still do Instagram reels. And so our Instagram reel idea they have on here is about generating questions. So basically it says, ask questions to generate some discussion in the comments or for people to stitch a video. Some of the questions you can ask are, for example, and it lists like 10 questions, but some of the questions are like, do you DNF books? What was your last 5-star read? What book are you looking forward to reading in 2025? Do you wait until a series is out to start reading, or do you wait in between release dates? And then it has a whole bunch of other ones listed underneath. So again, everyone's going to pick a different question. You can come up with your own question. Basically, what I love about this particular content calendar, I'm sorry for all the hands because I'm excited. You know how I am. Anyway, the reason I love this one is because it's basically kind of like just giving you a prompt. And then you have to take that prompt and run with it. So you are still 100% in control of what is put on your page. It's not cookie cutter. You're not just like copying and pasting someone else's status. You are literally creating original content, but you're not as stressed out about it because you're being prompted, which I really love because you guys know social media is something I struggle with. So anyways, I love this one. Again, it's $15 to me. It's a no-brainer. Like, why would you not? I will link it below. I highly recommend it. But there are a ton of other versions of authored content calendars out there. If you happen to know of a different one, or if you know somebody who this is their side hustle, they make content calendars or they sell a book with Instagram ideas or whatever, feel free to share their information in the comment section below, because I am a huge fan of supporting people in their creative endeavors like this. And I know a lot of authors who have things like this that they sell on the side to make extra income. So anyway, feel free to share below, and I will also link this one below if you want to purchase it. All right, status update on Mom's book. So Mom's book right now is fully re-outlined. I'm in the process of writing it. And let me tell you, it is Christmas time. I have been so emotional during this entire, and I knew I would be. I knew I was going to cry like a little wuss the whole time I was rewriting this book. And this holiday season has been really hard. And I think it's been hard in general just because I always miss my mom during the holiday season, especially so fun fact about my Christmas decorations. I think I have a video on here from Vlogmas years ago where I talk about and I show videos of Christmas decorations, but my Christmas decorations are primarily inherited from my mother and my grandmother, or they're things that they made me, because my mom used to have like a hope chest for my sister and I, but it's in boxes. She didn't have an actual hope chest, but she used to get things and when we all grew up and moved out, we had our box of stuff from Mom, and a lot of those were those homemade Christmas decorations. 90% of the ornaments on my tree were made by my mother, grandmother, or great-grandmother. All of my things, I got a few things I bought over the years, but I would say probably 90%. Like literally 90% of everything I have that's Christmas related came from them. So every holiday season, I have a good cry when I'm putting up the Christmas tree because it's all stuff they made me. And then doing that while rewriting my mother's book, there has been a lot of tears. So a couple of really fun things that I just kind of wanted to share because I thought they were, neat things that I found. So one of the things that I did not dig into right after Mother passed was, and I think this is true for everybody, right? When we think about our parents, we think about them as parents. Very rarely do we think about our parents as the people they were before we were born. My mother had 30 years of life before I came into the world, a little over 30 years of life. She was a teenager. She was a kid. She went through her 20s and the dating scene and all that. Like, she had a whole life experience before I came into the picture. And I wanted to learn more about that. So one of the things is I inherited a ton of stuff after she passed away. And I inherited like her yearbooks and notebooks and journals, and I have spent a lot of time digging through some of that stuff. And a couple of things I thought I would just share with you guys for fun. So I actually did, after my mom passed, I inherited all of her school yearbooks. I have all 4 of her high school yearbooks. So this is the 1964. It's probably backward in the camera, but that's okay. This is the 1964 yearbook for Hammond Vocational Technical High School. No, I said that backwards. Hammond Technical Vocational High School in Hammond, Indiana. My mom called it it was called Hammond Tech. The building, fun fact, the building is still there. It's actually the Hammond Area Career Center, but it's not a high school anymore. And that's where my mother went for all 4 years of school. And I had the most fun going through her book. You know, this has been in our house my whole life, but I never looked through my parents' yearbooks, which I think is hilarious, because when my dad passed away and I looked at his senior yearbook, I was like, Dad. So he had quite the reputation for being a ladies' man. I was like, ew. But my mother, on the other hand, hers has been really fun to look at because there's a recurring theme in every single comment. And after reading this, I was like, that's my mother. And it is to a nice girl, to a sweet, nice girl, right? To a real nice girl, to a sweet girl, to a real sweet girl. Every single one of these. Good luck. You have been so sweet to me. To a real nice person who I always could depend on. Good luck to the nicest person I've ever met. And I thought, you know what? Everybody I've ever met who knew my mother, even after she got married and had kids, that's the one thing they talk about is just how sweet and kind. You know, which is funny because she was my mother. So I grew up with like the you piss mom off, you're going to know it. But underneath all of that, she was just nice and kind. And I feel like I love that so many people also saw that in her. Some things that I thought were really funny are that this one said, to a crazy Jack fan. I don't know who Jack is, but it says to a real crazy Jack fan and a real Fab Beatles fan too. But most of all, a nice friend. This is from Julie. I don't know who Jack is. I wish my mother was here because I'd be like, who's Jack? But I know who the Beatles are, obviously. My mother loved the Beatles like most girls did in 1964. And then another one that I thought was really fun is, and this is more of a fun fact for me. You guys obviously wouldn't care about this, but my mom and dad's friend Wilbur signed her yearbook. I knew they went to school together. I knew they knew each other from school, but I didn't realize that like they were close enough where he would have signed her yearbook. So my mother, Wilbur, I think was he a year younger or 2 years younger than her? I'm not sure. He was a little bit younger than her. And so fun fact was that my mother grew up with Wilbur. They went to school together, and then they, grew up and went on their own ways. And like over a decade later, my mother got married to my father, and my father got a job in the steel mill temporarily, and he ended up getting laid off and going into police work after that. But before all of that, he worked at the steel mill and he met Wilbur. And then as they got to becoming friends and talking, and my dad's like, yeah, my wife Ellen, she went to Hammond Tech. And it turns out that my mom and Wilbur knew each other from school, and Wilbur was my dad's best friend there for several years. Unfortunately, Wilbur was killed in the early 90s in a car accident. And his was a really sad situation where he was on his way to work and there was someone running from the police. He had robbed a store or something like that and was running from the police, blew through the stoplight. He hit Wilbur and he killed him. And that always really, I remember that my mom actually, this is so sad. This is a really depressing story. So I was playing with my toys in the living room. Me and my sister were, and my mother was in the kitchen making lunch, and she had a little radio, and the local radio station was called WJOB in Hammond, and my mother was making lunch, and it came over the radio. There was a car accident at blah, 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 AM, killed, deceased, Wilbur, I'm not gonna say his last name, and that was how my mother found out that he was killed, and my dad was at work at the time. And he didn't know what happened either. And my mother was just hysterical. And I remember that day because we all found out he passed away. And at that point in time, I don't even really know if his family knew. Like, I mean, it was just like an hour or two after he passed. But anyway, really, really sad. So anyways, I had a fun time looking through these. There's some funny ones in here that I really wish my mother was alive so I could ask her about. So one of those is from a girl named Juanita, and she says, I hope you will never forget Verna and me. Don't know who Verna is. In foods class, and it has a winky face. I also wish you love, happiness, and all the luck the world has in store for you. And I'm like, so what happened in foods class, Mom, that there's a winky face? And then at the beginning, there's one about econ class, which, let's be real, econ's the most boring class in the world. But this one is like, to a real sweet girl who I've enjoyed knowing these last few years, never forget the craziness of econ class. Love ya, Nancy. Crazy and econ class are not two things that go in the same sentence, I would just like to say. Also, it's fun to look through graduation cards. I've got all of these cards that, you know, like giving $2. That's a graduation present. I was cracking up because there's one from my aunt and uncle. Well, my uncle, my great uncle, my grandmother's brother, they divorced later on, but at the time, my mother's birthday was in June. So they were sending her birthday money and graduation money. So it says, P.S., $2 is for your birthday and $5 are for graduation. Woo, $7. I was like, really? And then I was also laughing because at the end of this letter, which I did not realize this, she's asking my mother how she's enjoying the new house. So my grandfather, my mom's dad, passed away in 1963 from cancer. And about a year later, my grandmother was able to buy a house, which was a big deal. I'm assuming she used life insurance money. I never asked the question, and I should have, but I'm assuming that was with life insurance money that she was able to buy a house for her and the 3 kids that were left. And that house was actually my childhood home. So the house belonged to my grandmother. My grandmother remarried later on, and then her and my grandfather moved back to Whitehall, which is where my mother grew up. And they sold the house to my parents, and my parents bought the house. I was a baby. I'm like less than a year old, and we moved into grandma's house basically, and I was raised in that house. So my mother spent right after high school all the way up until she pretty much got married. She moved out like her late 20s, but she spent a good time of her time there. And then it was grandma's house when my sister was little, and then it became our house, and I lived there with my parents up until I was in my late 20s, until my mother passed away. So it's kind of fun to realize that like she graduated high school and had just moved into the house that I was raised in, which is kind of fun. Another really fun thing that this one made me crack up because my mother had a really funny sense of humor. She was very serious and very religious and very sweet, but she also could be hilarious when she wanted to. So I don't know if this is done around the world, but I know in the United States they do a senior will where you will a lower classman and it's usually you try to keep it funny. So I will so-and-so all of my homework from math class, or you know what I mean? Something like that. Well, my mother's was about her cousin, and I got to find it on here. It made me crack up. This is from the Senior Will of 1964. Here we go. My mother's maiden name was Havlin, and hers says, I, Ellen Havlin, will to my cousin Charles Norton my natural blonde hair so he can stop bleaching his. So anyways, I just thought it was cute. I've had the most fun, I'm sorry for the noise. I've had the most fun reminiscing. But probably the most prized possession I have is actually a letter that was written by my cousin. And I don't know how to get a hold of her because I haven't talked to her in years. And she's obviously up in age at this point. But I would love actually to include this as potentially an introduction to my book or as part of my book. But I'm not sure how to do that because it's a letter that she wrote. Now, I remember receiving this letter right after my mother passed. But I was so emotionally distraught that I kind of read through it briefly one time stuck it in the bag where we have all of her like funeral doodads and cards and things, and I never looked at it again. So when I brought this out last week, this was 2 weeks ago, this was the first time I have read this letter and actually like took in the letter from an emotional standpoint, and it has been so fun to read. I'm not going to read this whole thing to you guys, but I will read part of it to you just because I think that it is so well written, but I need to get a hold of my cousin and just see if I can actually get her permission. But she talks about their childhood together, and it's written from my cousin. Her name is Joy Painter Wood, and it's titled Love from a Cousin. And I'm going to read like the first like page to you guys, and then I'll cut it off. But it goes like this. The movement of the hammock slashed through the air with the to and fro motion. 2 little girls, side by side, on the rough-hewn slats bound together by a heavy cable, secured between a large tree and a sunken post. We surveyed the sky, playing the cloud game, seeing who could spot a familiar shape. Back and forth, sitting up, sliding our feet down to meet the barren patch of dirt in order to pump ourselves to a new, wider arc. Ellen and I could stay there for an hour at a time, mesmerized by the low groan of the post shuddering from one side to the other, mixed with the sounds of passing cars on the hard road. Occasionally, a car pulled over from, which, by the way, backtrack a minute, they used to call the main road the hard road because they lived such a rural area that all of the roads were gravel. So the hard road was the main highway, fun fact. So they called it the hard road. All the way, even when all the roads became paved and I was a little kid, it was still called the hard road. All right, anyway, back to the letter. Occasionally a car pulled over from the road with people on their way back to St. Louis or points south. They were usually interested in rabbits for sale or birds for sold here. Our grandmother ran business from her side porch. Parakeets, finches, and canaries were her inventory. Rabbits survived in raised hutches in the front yard. We never were allowed to play with them and never really understood why. Our grandfather seemed less severe. He was a trickster who enjoyed snakes crawling up one sleeve and down the other simply to petrify us, since neither of us were fans. One time he confronted us during our hammock time. We retreated quickly, rounding the corner of the house, passing the pump, and practically jumping through the screen door. Belltown was the meeting spot for Ellen and me. Our parents often visited their parents at the same time. Our family based in Whitehall, population 2,000. Belltown, a mere hiccup between Carrollton and Whitehall, was where our families joined forces for evening meals at the Painter House. Sometimes I would stay there with Ellen at the personal cost of having to drink well water, use the common cup, and trot to the outhouse. And it goes on from there. Basically, she talks about all of the fun things they did as children, such as berry picking. She tells stories about them going down to Apple Creek and fishing with my great-grandfather. They talk about when Mom moved to Hammond because her father got a job at the steel mill. And they talk about the eventual death of my grandfather, and then my mother as a teenager coming out to visit because my uncle was in the Navy, so he traveled a lot because he got stationed in different places. And then she ends it talking about how when they became adults and they got married, obviously their lives kind of became disentangled because not because they didn't love each other, but because they lived on the opposite sides of the country. She lived all the way in Hawaii. We lived in Indiana. So, unfortunately we didn't see each other as often, but this is probably my most prized possession because it gives me a glimpse of my mother as a child, which of course is the person that I never had the honor of getting to know because I wasn't born yet. So that made me cry multiple times. I would love to see if she would let me include that in the book somehow. I don't know if she will, but anyway, it has been emotional. That's what I've been working on. I have this weekend off, obviously, and I have kind of a nice couple work weeks here because of the way the holidays fall. So I have half days on Christmas Eve, New Year's Eve. I have Christmas and New Year's off, and then I have the day after the holidays off. So, and then of course I have weekends off. So really I'm working like 2.5 days for the next 2 weeks. Well, 5 if you do the math. 2.5 one week, 2.5 the next week. So I'm going to have a lot of time to work on things, and I'm excited about getting this book wrapped up, getting in there, incorporating all the fun stories about my mother, and going from there. So that's what I've been up to. I will probably have a vlog of some sort, or maybe like a year wrap up, or I'll have something for you guys next week. But I would love to hear what your plans are for the holiday. Happy holidays to anybody who is going to be out and about and not be there to watch YouTube. If you liked my video, thumbs up, like, subscribe, share, comment, all the things. Otherwise, I will see you in the next one. Bye, guys.